Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 12th and last roundtable session of the second series of Challenging Discrimination, Climate Change and Environmental Discrimination. I would like to use this opportunity to thank the funder of this program, Edmonton Community Foundation, that made it possible for us to continue this year. I would also like to note that we have live subtitles turned on our end. So if you're not seeing them and you would like to have them on, please make sure that you turn them on in the settings area. So we'll wait for maybe a couple minutes until everyone gets a chance to join us and then continue. Welcome, everyone. So today we are here with our last session of the Roundtable series, Climate Change and Environmental Discrimination. In a few moments, we will get started with today's session and our conversation. All right, so first we would like to do a treaty acknowledgement. So we're gathered here on Amiskwasi, Waskahikan, traditional Treaty 6 territory of First Nations and the Métis Nation of Alberta Zone 4. We respectfully acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this land for centuries, including the Cree, Nehio, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota, Blackfoot, as well as the Métis and the Inuit. This land is and has been a welcoming place for all peoples who come to Edmonton and call it home. It is a place built for community, trade, friendship, and shared understanding. We recognize those Indigenous peoples who are still fighting for equality today, and we support them in the spirit of decolonization and reconciliation. We remain committed to honoring the struggles of our Indigenous siblings and joining with them to end injustice. Together, we call upon all of our collective honored traditions and ancestors to help us work together in the spirit of community and understanding today and onwards. So why do we do treaty acknowledgements? We're all treaty people. Long ago, when the first settlers came to this land, they drafted treaties that Indigenous peoples signed with goodwill and in good faith. Those settlers up until today have not always honored those treaties. The treaties were meant to honor the traditional land and way of life of Indigenous peoples, to ensure their rights and prosperity and build understanding of mutual cooperation. Today, we acknowledge the treaty land as a way to recommit to honoring the spirit of those treaties and to recognize the continued rights of Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of this land. We recognize that many Indigenous peoples have been dispossessed of their land and traditional ways of life, and along with that, the prosperity that came with it. We acknowledge the treaty to understand we all have a role to play as treaty people in reconciliation and righting the historical wrongs that have taken place. And we would like to ask you to share your land acknowledgements if you are not joining us from Edmonton. You can do that in the chat box if you would like. And so a little bit about Center for Race and Culture. We are here to promote and support individual, collective, and systemic change, to address discrimination and racism, and to encourage intercultural understanding. If you would like to learn more about current events, projects, or activities, please visit our website and or sign up for our newsletter at CRFRAC.com. So about our roundtable series, this session is the last session of the initiative titled Challenging Discrimination Through Community Conversations. This has been an ongoing series of online moderated roundtables and webinars with guest speakers and community leaders joining us from diverse communities, organizations, academia, and the general public. And here we've tried to understand and address experiences of discrimination and exclusion in the Canadian context. By shining the spotlight on different forms of discrimination, such as anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, discrimination against Asian communities, amongst other topics, we have tried to encourage solidarity among groups and individuals interested in promoting social inclusion and equity. And so we're always looking forward to receiving your comments, suggestions for further maybe series, sessions, and ideas for collaboration. So if you or your organization are interested to collaborate with us, please contact us at consulting@CRFRAC.com. So now we would like to share an anonymous demographic data, a poll with you. It will take probably about 1 minute. And we would appreciate it if you could take this poll to give us a better understanding of our audiences. All right, thanks so much for taking the time. All right, so to introduce our panelists today, first we have Yasmin Abraham, a co-founder of Kambo Energy Group. Yasmin is the visionary behind Empower Me, Canada's only energy and climate-focused program designed for and delivered by members of underserved communities. Under Yasmin's leadership, Kambo has become a leader and advocate for the inclusion of lower income families in climate policies, especially advocating for support for families experiencing energy poverty. Kambo's Community Power Division is dedicated exclusively to reducing energy poverty and improving housing conditions in Indigenous communities. Yasmin is a leading expert in equity-based energy and climate programming, working with governments and utilities across Canada to design and deliver inclusive solutions. Yasmin has assembled an employee roster representative of the communities they serve. 83% identify as visible minority, immigrant, and or multilingual, and 59% of employees are female. Next, we have Lauren Hall, Residential Energy Community Programs Coordinator at the City of Edmonton. Her work focuses on the implementation of initiatives that mitigate energy use and greenhouse gas emissions in Edmonton's residential sector. Programs Lauren works on include Edmonton's Home Energy retrofit accelerator and the residential solar rebate program. Lauren holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Conservation Sciences from the University of Alberta and a Master of Business Administration in Community Economic Development from Cape Breton University. She has over 10 years experience implementing environmental sustainability and energy efficiency programming in institutional, public, and nonprofit settings. Through her career and education, Lauren has developed a strong background in comparative development, co-creating solutions, climate action, greenhouse gas accounting, active transportation, green building, and energy reporting. And last but not least, it's our own Serafina King, our project assistant at Center for Race and Culture. She joined CRFRAC in 2021 and has been working on several projects, including challenging discrimination through community conversations and bridging the intercultural gap, as well as helping develop and facilitate educational programs. A recent graduate of MacEwan University, Serafina will be continuing her studies at the University of Alberta, where she will pursue a master's in sociocultural anthropology focused on community building. Welcome, everyone, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mensre. So to get started this evening, we're going to get started with the first question, which is, what is environmental discrimination and why is it important to talk about it? Yasmin, would you like to start us off?
Sure. The big question. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you and familiar faces as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Yasmin with the lovely introduction. Thank you. I come to this work really as a person of color, as an immigrant myself. I come from 5 generations of immigrants who have immigrated around the world. My great-great-great-grandfather was from India. He immigrated to Zanzibar. My great generations up. My great-grandparents and my grandparents were from Pakistan and Uganda, and then my dad was born in Pakistan, and then he immigrated to England, and then I immigrated here. So we are a family of immigrants, and I think, a lot of the work that we do has been influenced by my family's immigrant journey. I have 2 small children, and the work that I do is a family business. I run it with my younger brother. So that's kind of a little bit of context about what we do. And we work directly in equity and environment. Environmental discrimination, I think there's lots of amazing research and work that's been done on it, and there's lots of blogs. For us, really, we look at environmental discrimination as it relates to people having adverse effects of climate change, so being more affected than other folks in the impacts of climate change, and being unable to access the important mitigation and adaptation services and programs that are out there. So there's 2 sort of parts to it. One, you're more affected than other people. And secondly, you are unable to access the things that are supposed to help you. So we at Kambo design programs and solutions to help ensure everybody can access all of the really important programs and services that are out there for everybody. So I'm sure there's lots of sort of more research, more academic descriptions about environmental discrimination, but for us, that's really where we work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Lauren, what about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Really nice to be here speaking with you all. Thank you again for the introduction for me as well. I'll just acknowledge up front, I'm a settler on this land. My family has been here for a few generations, but so I am just someone who works for the city of Edmonton, but I'm also very active in the community, and really am interested in this topic and happy to be here speaking with you. So when it comes to environmental discrimination, I think my understanding of it comes a little bit from my employment background, but it also just comes from my academic background as well. And when I think of it as communities that are experiencing inequality and are burdened with health hazards, and through policies and practices that might force them to live in proximity to factories or major roads, and have those impact their mental health and their ability to connect with the environment. Also, a lot of the time, communities that are being discriminated against might not have access to parkland or outdoor space to spend time in and connect with nature, especially if that's a huge part of culture that sometimes can be removed. And then also, when it comes to environmental discrimination, there's also an area of exclusion where many intersections and identities aren't necessarily included in the policy formation process or in the protection of policies or in the public engagement. So it's really working to address all of those and really encourage equity in everything that we do, so that everyone has like easy access to the environment and that their health and mental health and everything is protected. It's really hard to talk about environmental discrimination without social justice, because the two are intrinsically linked. They walk hand in hand and are very much so related.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, what I'm hearing from you both is that it's just such a widespread problem and it needs to be addressed from many different angles. So when we consider that, how does environmental discrimination play out in Canada and in Alberta? Because Yasmin is joining us from British Columbia and Lauren is, of course, from Edmonton right here.
Yeah, Lauren, maybe I'll jump in. I think there's so many different types of people in this world and in our country. We all have unique needs, whether it's language, life experience, trust, different types of homes, financial experiences. There's lots of folks that have unique needs when it comes to environmental programming and environmental needs. And if we, as a sector, design support specifically for the upper middle class white family, nuclear family that has 2.2 kids in a minivan, there's a whole lot of people that are going to be missed with that work. And we're not going to hit our climate goals if we don't include them. So what that looks like is that there's a lot of immigrants that are unable to access programming. There's a lot of newcomers, Indigenous communities, lower income families, things like when we think about energy poverty. So there's lots of really great programming out there to upgrade your home. You can get rebates for insulation and heat pumps and windows and great stuff, but you need to have $8,000 in your bank to pay the contractor up front before you get that rebate. Not everybody has that, especially in this economy. There's also loan programs available. The government of Canada just announced their, I think it's $50,000 loan for folks to do similar. 50, Lauren? 40, okay, so $40,000. But a lot of people already are in a lot of debt, and it's not always appropriate for these families to take on more debt. So while these programs are good and certainly an important part of the solution, we need, we need to make sure that we have other options for all of the folks who don't have $8,000 in the bank account or whatever it would cost to upfront to a contractor. Making sure things are in multiple languages, considering the unique needs, how people access information. So it's really looking at how programs and solutions are, who's accessing them. I think that's an important piece. We have all of these important mitigation and adaptation things, but it's the data is, we don't have a lot of data to tell us who's accessing them and conversely who is not accessing them. There's a huge part of the discussion we could have on, data when it comes to race and demographics. You guys did the poll up front, so you sort of know who's in the room. We have none of that data when it comes to environmental programming and environmental supports generally across our sector. And so I think things like pushing ourselves to be brave enough to ask those questions. You know, who is accessing these programs? This is federal money. This is provincial money, the municipal money. We all pay our taxes. But if only a certain demographic is accessing them, then that's a really, you know, that doesn't align with a lot of our goals as a country, as a province, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think that that's like the key point. How do we make it accessible for everyone instead of just designing for what we might have once thought of as being typical? Thank you, Lauren. What about from yourself?
Yeah, I think that Yasmin really got it there with the data. We definitely need more data, and that's something that is severely lacking right now. But it's something that we're looking to incorporate into more municipal, like on all of our energy programs we have right now. We've started to collect that demographic data, but you know, it's something that I wish we had started a little bit longer ago. But it's going to serve us really well, like in the long run, to be able to create these programs for everyone. Yeah, and Yasmin was talking about energy poverty, and I think that that's something that a lot of Canadians and Albertans experience. You know, like low-income households are a lot more likely to be living in homes that may not be energy efficient, just because that's not where they're going to necessarily put their money when they have money to spend, right? They'll, you know, put it towards meeting basic needs instead of upgrading their homes and making it more efficient. But you know, that means that sometimes, especially with the way things are currently going, their energy bills are going to get higher and higher, right? And it's going to take up a larger percentage of their monthly take-home pay and that kind of thing. So it's definitely something that we need to start addressing for sure. You know, and like another thing, when it comes to energy poverty too, another population that's extremely affected is disabled people, because they often have a higher energy burden. So they have to do things like charge their aids and like things that help them out, and or they maybe have like a chair to help them get up and down the stairs, and that's just like another thing that tacks onto their energy bill. So you know, there's a lot of people that are affected by the heightening energy prices, and you know, anything that we can do to help make homes more efficient for everyone and to reduce that burden is huge. And you know, even renters are affected by this as well, because oftentimes the energy bill is passed on to the renter instead of the landlord. So you know, even making programs for landlords to be able to upgrade their properties and you know, have the renters see that benefit. These are all things that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Just want to add, if you don't mind, Serafina, something Lauren mentioned that I would be remiss if I didn't say is that Alberta is currently the only province or territory or state not to have a home upgrades program specifically for lower income families. You know, the lower income families are, you know, unfortunately everywhere, and people struggle with their energy bills everywhere. However, everywhere else has the supports and has different types of programming to help them. So, you know, across Canada, these programs have been available since the early 90s to help reduce consumption and help reduce energy bills, achieve our climate targets. But unfortunately, in Alberta, we're kind of left, people are left out in the cold, literally. So, you know, I think that it's a big inequity in Alberta specifically that we and Lauren and the city, we're all trying to fix. But that's certainly one of the biggest ones that I see for Alberta.
Wow, I didn't know that. And I'm sure lots of our audience members might not either. Thank you for sharing. I wonder if we could just touch on something that Lauren mentioned, which is this idea of energy poverty. Can we talk a little bit more about what that is and how that plays out?
I can take that, Lauren, or you can, do you want me to? Okay, so energy poverty is what Lauren was mentioning, and the programs I was just talking about is really around when households cannot afford to adequately heat or cool their home appropriately. So they make decisions like they might not turn their heat on all the way up because they can't pay the bill, and so they're really cold. They might not turn on their air conditioning because they're scared their bill will go up, so then they're really hot. They might have to go to the food bank because their bills are so high they can't afford groceries. So lots of negative choices for households whose bills are extremely high and their income is extremely low. In Alberta, 1 in 5 families struggle with energy poverty. And what this means from a numbers point of view is that their income is 50% less than the average Albertan, and their energy bills are 30% more. So they're paying more for something, and they have less money to spend on it. So you can imagine at that point, energy bills become a real challenge for folks. And that's what we're talking about when, you know, everywhere else has a program and has supports for these families, except Alberta.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that for us. I think
Lauren, anything to add there?
Yes, Lauren.
No, I think you did a great job. That's a great definition.
Absolutely. I think it just shows us how intersectional these issues are. So next, we'd like to talk about how can we address these issues in our communities? What are some steps that we can take to help solve this big problem of this disparate needs and disparate access? What can we do?
Go ahead, Lauren.
Sure. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that we can start to do. I think one of them is, like getting involved with grassroots organizations and communities. That's like always something to do. And I think that these groups really help advocate for movement in this space and can really make things happen. I think that we need more research when it comes to energy poverty and environmental discrimination in Canada. There's a lot of it out of the States, and there is starting to be more out of Canada, which is fantastic. But I think, like, you know, building to that research body is like great. I have more, but do you want to go? Like, do you want to go back and forth a bit, Yasmin?
Sure. Yeah, let's riff off each other. Yes, totally agree. And actually, one of the most wonderful energy poverty researchers is on this call, Dr. Runa Das, and she just released a report on energy poverty in Ontario. I know she's doing some cool stuff. Anyway, so shout out to her. The way I think we can really address some of this is kind of goes back to, you know, who's making these decisions? Who are the people at the top that are making these decisions? What's their life experience? What color is their skin? Where do the parents come from? What's the diversity of those folks? Because when you have people who have a wide range of life experience, you get solutions that are creative and consider more than just that upper white middle class family. So I certainly think that diversity when it comes to designing, delivering, deciding, making those choices is a huge piece of it. And like Lauren said, I agree with Lauren about like the community involvement and engagement. Generally, we find communities know what they need. Like communities know the solutions they need, whether it's engagement or outreach or, you know, how to access programming. They know. It's just whether the powers that be will trust the community groups to do it the way that they want to do it. It's like, we got to shift that power. Yeah.
Yeah, like a bottom up approach for these types of initiatives can be a lot more effective instead of the top down approach where there's the power that be just saying, we have this program, here it is for you, now use it.
Totally.
That like a lot, it can be complicated and hard to understand, like, and maybe it's not designed in a way that makes sense to that particular community. So yeah, like being able to really like work with community organizations and design things that work for people is like the way to go.
Yeah.
And like just to build on that a little, like there is just in general in the energy efficiency and like solar workforce, like there is underrepresentation like there for diverse communities and diverse genders and different abilities. Like there isn't enough diversity. So building diversity in that workforce is also a huge thing. Yeah.
Thank you both. I hear that we need to listen more, right? Listen more to the communities and how can we work from the bottom up, right? And help those who need it the most, who also, as you said, you both said, they know what they need. Thank you. So can we talk a little bit about what you each are doing in your own work? What are you working on to help achieve climate justice? What sort of measures do you take in your workplace? What sort of community programs and other programming do you have? We'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. Yes. Well, I get to come and talk to amazing folks like you and tell you all about the work that we do. But we also, we deliver 2 programs in Alberta. Empower Me, which helps, is specifically designed to help newcomers and immigrants understand how their home works, how energy bills work, who's NMAX, who's EPCOR, what are rebates, why should I take advantage of them, why should I care? So we deliver this whole entire program across the province. We hire people from the community who know the community. They know how to, of course they know the language, but they also know the subtleties of their culture and of their community. And so we trust them to deliver the program in the way that works for them. Part of the magic is that program is holistic. So we don't just talk about energy because people need more information than just energy. They need to know, what goes in a green bin, what goes in a blue bin, where do I get it? What is water saving? Why should I care? What's the Greener Homes program? Who's NRCan? So really providing a holistic solution for those folks. And that's Empower Me. So you can access that at www.empowerme.ca. And then we also do a lot of work with Indigenous nations, and together we help and support Indigenous nations with their own energy sovereignty. So we'll do a lot of work helping support housing upgrade plans, climate planning, and we'll do the work as well. So we go into communities and do amazing, help, or just privileged to do some of these amazing projects, upgrading homes, working with the communities in their future planning. We do a lot of advocating. So, the work that we do, it lends to speaking with political and elected officials. So lots of advocating, lots of saying a lot of these things to elected officials, which is fun and just not a world I thought I'd be in, but here you are. What else do we do? Yeah, we just try to share as much of our message as possible. There's lots of amazing people doing this work, and we're not going to be able to do it alone. This is a huge problem, and so really trying to support other people, collaborate with other folks to move the needle.
Thank you. What about yourself, Lauren?
Yeah, so at the City of Edmonton, for years we've been working actively in the space of climate mitigation and climate adaptation. So a lot of good work has been done. Currently, we have a few community energy programs that we have running. So we have the Home Energy Retrofit Accelerator, which is a rebate program. So for energy efficiency, so you can upgrade your insulation in your walls or put in a smart thermostat and get money back on that. But like Yasmin said, that's where you pay up front and then we give you a portion of that money back. We also have a solar rebate program where people can install solar on their home and then get a rebate on that as well. And yeah, so these are programs that we've had running for a little while now. And after both of them are released is when we actually release the updated version of our community energy transition strategy and action plan, which is like a pretty cool document that I think we're going to be able to leverage to move the needle on the inclusivity of our environmental programming as well. So we did just so much consultation on this strategy and action plan with community groups that are interested in climate, in equity, in like social justice, climate justice, all that thing. And like what we heard throughout the consultation is that we needed to have a focus on equity and justice. So built into every part of our updated community energy transition and action plan, we have that justice and equity lens. And it's something that we like look to apply to all of our work. And, coming up, we're in the beginning phases of some work with, hopefully with Kambo and Alberta Eco Trust to kind of get a pilot going so we can start to explore energy poverty in Edmonton a little bit more. And yeah, like hopefully build a program around that in the future. Yeah, and also another thing I'll note is like the new council that we have and the city of Edmonton is really interested in equity. So another thing that we're doing in the city is doing a GBA plus analysis on all of the work that we're doing. And so all council reports need to have that GBA plus analysis. GBA plus stands for gender-based analysis plus. So it's kind of a process that we can go through to kind of ask ourselves, who's benefiting from this work? Who are we harming anyone from this or with this work? Is anyone being left out? And then how can we fix that? Like, what can we do to ensure that everyone is being included and no one's being left behind? So there's, a lot of good things going on for sure.
Wow, thank you both. I wonder if we could ask you if there are any initiatives that you've heard about in the world, in Canada, going on that you're excited about, something that you're interested in seeing more from, something that you found inspiring. We'd love to know. Give you a little moment to think about that. But I have to say we're excited. I didn't know about this action plan, Lauren. And Yasmin, it's great to hear more about what you've been doing, working with Indigenous groups here, also with helping immigrants to have access to this information, which, you know what, as a 20-something, it is not always clear. So I think it's great that you're both able to help share this information.
Yeah, it's definitely really complicated. And I'll also say, it's like Empower Me helps us explain HERA to people in different languages. So HERA is the Home Energy Retrofit. See, I can't even say it because it's such a long name. Home Energy Retrofit Accelerator. Like the rebate program, and it's been really great. We love working with Empower Me on that. So
that's amazing. What a great partnership.
Yes, I think one thing that's exciting me, so the I think I'm allowed to talk about it. There's an electric vehicle initiative coming up with the city of Edmonton this year, which is super exciting, and there's going to be an event. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but it's going to be awesome. And all the cars are going to be there. They're going to be able to be test drive. And as Lauren said, considering equity in all of it. So folks will be there speaking multiple languages, helping support, answering questions. I think it's just like, especially coming out of COVID, it's nice to consider, getting back in person again. And I think COVID really highlighted inequities in not only in climate, but in healthcare. And so it does seem like, I guess the thing I'm excited about is the fact that these conversations are happening. It's much more normal to have these sort of inequity conversations in climate than it ever was. And so that's super exciting. And just the fact that a city has an equity foundation in all of their work is amazing, and not, certainly wasn't happening a few years ago. So I think that is, just where we're going as a country. But I think, ultimately it doesn't, we have to do the work to reduce emissions. It doesn't really matter how much money we spend, how many plans we write, how many reports we do, we got to reduce emissions. And so, when we have to reduce emissions everywhere, not just in certain demographics. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge.
Thank you, Lauren.
Oh yeah, and I just echo, I'm glad that these conversations are happening, and it is something that, it's just like a conversation that people seem to be having in all sorts of organizations. It's great.
Absolutely, thank you. And now one of our final questions is, what community initiatives are available for the public? What can the public do to help contribute to climate justice? Or where can they find out more information if this conversation has sparked an interest and they realize that there's some learning for them to do?
Well, you can always email me. I'm always happy to chat. Never met a phone call I didn't want to take. My big message here is, like, if this is important to you, call your elected official. Go talk to your elected officials, municipality, provincially, federally. They will talk to you. If you send them an email, they will meet with you, and just tell them you care about it. And they're lovely people. They're not scary. They want your vote, so they're going to be nice to you. But tell them what you think. I think that is, honestly, one of the biggest ways that everyday people can have an impact in this work. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point, Yasmin. the council decides what I work on, essentially, right? So if you talk to them and they know something's important to you, they'll want to they'll want to represent you and bring it to us. Yeah, and like I think in the Edmonton area, there are some like groups that you can get involved with, or like at least they have like good information to access. Like includes Climate Justice Edmonton. There's Indigenous Climate Action, and I also like to maybe this isn't necessary. I think that it's related to climate justice, but I always like to plug the sharing economy. In Edmonton, we have some like cool organizations. There's the Edmonton Tool Library, so like, where you can like rent tools and like fix your house, and they like have a sliding scale for membership. So like, you know, there should be no barriers to accessing that kind of thing. But like, you know, being able to share things and kind of like do that sharing economy helps everyone, I think, and reduces the impact on the environment as well. So
thank you. That's a great resource. And all of the resources mentioned today, we will be sure to share them with all of you in a follow-up email later this week or early next week. So don't worry if you didn't have a chance to write it down. We'll have all of these links, you know, links to the action plan, links to Empower Me, links to this Edmonton Tool Library. And one more question we have is, what can we do? And we've talked about it a little today, but what can we do to make sure everybody has a seat at the table and that everybody can have a voice here when it comes to this vital issue that impacts all of us?
I'm trying to think of what I haven't already said. I think we need to have people who are elected who realize this. You know, as I've been doing this for 15 years, been working in equity and climate, and I believe that as long as when people, the elected officials and policymakers understand these issues, and they're complex issues, but if they understand them enough and they know that people care about them, we can move the dial. We can move the dial. And I think it just goes back to, you know, helping these officials and people know that this is an important piece for Canadians and for Albertans.
yeah, I think that is the main one, Yasmin. It is just like getting in contact with those elected officials. And, you know, I think also there is something to be said too for knowing your neighbors and having conversations with people in your community about things that you care about and things that you're passionate about. And when you do that kind of thing, you're more likely to find common interests and, you know, want to pursue maybe common projects, and, you know, you can make stuff happen. And yeah, getting involved with community organizations never hurts too. I know like the pandemic has just happened and we're all kind of burnt out. But, you know, I think that those types of things are what will move the needle.
Absolutely, thank you. So I think that what we're hearing is that being politically engaged, politically involved is really, really important here on this issue. Well, hopefully we will have some time now to take some questions from the audience. So please use the chat box below if you have any questions you'd like to ask our speakers. We have some time, they're here, they'd love to ask you. So we're glad that you're here to join us and ask some questions. I see that Clint has a question. Absolutely. Can you type it in the chat below? Thank you.
Can we unmute Clint? Is that possible?
I'm not sure.
Clint, I think I unmuted you. Sorry, Serafina, I jumped in.
No, that's good.
Yeah, I don't like the keyboard, especially on this one. It's Bluetooth and the caps locks don't work, shift doesn't work, and It doesn't have spell check either. So the iPad's up on the thing here and keyboard's down here. But anyways, I was just going to say, I appreciate the, that you guys are doing all this work. That tool library, I heard about that on the news before, not too long ago. That's a great idea because, in order to make a tool, you need a mine, right? You need to extract these minerals, these materials from the earth. And those mines cause a lot of pollution. Then everything that delivers those materials to another plant to make the tools, and everybody that drives to those plants, all of that carbon monoxide from vehicles, and then driving it to another one to package it, and then driving it in the plastic that's being packaged to use to package it, becomes even more mines. And that is just a big trickle effect. I mean, it doesn't take long when, you look at one drill and you look at the road it took to get it to your home. That's a lot of traveling. When COVID happened, I liked when you brought that up. Everybody stopped and everybody slowed down, and there was less vehicles, less planes, less plants working around the clock. And we've seen the effects of that in pictures where in some cities where they never used to be able to see mountains, or they never used to be able to see their high rises because of all the smog. All of a sudden, you've seen clear days, right? So we've seen the effects of just a short amount of time where plants, planes, vehicles, all of these things were slowed and stopped. So having a place where you can rent a tool, where you can share instead of making something new, I think is very important. When we're making something new, we've got to realize it's got to go somewhere. Eventually, it's going to go somewhere, and that's where the oceans come into play, the dumps come into play, recycling places still cause emissions.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah.
It definitely saves emissions, and it's also just accessible. Tools are expensive, and a lot of people don't have a lot of space to store them. But yeah, there's a lot of good sharing economy organizations in town too, like them into new technology societies, a whole bunch of like pottery supplies and crafting stuff, and I don't know, there's a bunch. It's a cool thing to Google.
When you guys were speaking about partnerships and talking with Indigenous groups, did you guys ever take into consideration that the Indigenous people are getting more and more recognized by industries? And that's because it's becoming more and more knowledgeable that Indigenous people still have a treaty, which is with the Crown, something that Canada's not in. So when industries get permission from Canada, they're not really getting permissions from the right person. We gave permissions to the Crown, not to Canada. Canada's not in that treaty. So more of these industries are realizing they don't have the proper permissions to do what they're doing. And that's why you're seeing more and more industries partnering up with Indigenous nations. So when you guys talking about being able to have some, fight, being able to have some be able to make some changes and stuff, I think it'd be really good to understand those treaties. If you understand the treaties, then you understand that the Indigenous people still own the land, and we only gave permissions to the depth of the plow. We didn't give permissions for all these mines. And if you guys understand that, then permissions for these industries should be subject to what the Indigenous people agree to. And that could make a big impact on how much they can pollute, what they can do, right? If they want to do business, then they better listen to the ones that own. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Clint. Indigenous sovereignty is very, very important. And I would like to note that we do have an Indigenous speaker series on our webinar channel, which we'll share below, which does talk a little bit more about treaties, because many Canadians do not have a full understanding of how treaties work, and it is so important to understand. So thank you, Clint, for pointing that out for us. And that we're all treaty people. I see that we have a question from Jocelyn King below, so perhaps we could move to that one next.
Sorry, hello, sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was just wondering, we know that obviously the Alberta government doesn't currently have any legislation in place to support lower income families in terms of climate change and energy costs, etc. Do you know, I don't know, whether any of the opposition parties, the NDP or the Green Party, whether they have any policies on that? Because I think, you know, trying to discuss the issue with your current MLA is probably like talking to a brick wall. But if we can be talking to the opposition parties like the NDP and the Green Party, maybe we can help them develop some, or you can work with them and we can all encourage them to develop policies in this area.
That's a really good point, Jocelyn. I would like to asterisk my comment of elected officials, elected officials and people who want to be elected officials. We should talk to, those are the people we should talk to. I also don't know. I'm not a politician. I talk to a lot of them. My gut says they probably will. They probably will have something in there. I hope they do. But, you know, I think the challenge is in Alberta, you know, climate change and energy efficiency, which, you know, is a bit separate from climate change in some regards, has become a bit of a political hot potato. So yeah, your guess is probably as good as mine on some of those pieces, but I would expect so.
And I'll just pop on and say I'm also unsure about the provincial party's positions on that. I'm sure, but you know, we have an election coming up pretty soon, really, like in a year or something. So I'm sure they'll start releasing their platforms very soon. So something to keep an eye on.
Thank you. I think that that also is something that we as individuals can do, is to be going out and talking to those who want to be elected at the next election. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, thank you. And I was just thinking to myself, one change we've seen during COVID in Edmonton is that after trialing the green and black bins, is that they're now in effect across the city. And I think that that has made a big change. I know that for myself, with the little compost bin you keep in the kitchen, it does make you mindful, you know, of food waste, which does, of course, contribute in many ways to climate change. We know that so much of our food comes into Canada from many places, Southern America and further even. So I was just thinking about that as well.
Can I say something? I was just at an election code meeting, and our band reserved a room there, and the hotel gave food, and there was only maybe about 40 people, and there's probably enough food for 200, and we weren't allowed to take any food out because if somebody got poisoned or whatever, food poison, it could be lawsuits, right? So it reminded me of big plants, Syncrude, Suncor, Albion, all these different plants that have kitchens and all of this extra food. Trust me when I say there's a lot of food that goes to waste in hotels, restaurants, mines, all these things, right? I remember at a time there was a program, I believe, where stores were offering vegetables and stuff like that instead of throwing them out. Is there anything that holds these restaurants, mines, hotels, all these different organizations more accountable to food waste?
I'm not Oh, go for it, Yasmin.
I was probably just gonna say the same thing you are. I'm not too familiar. I think you make really, really important and good points. I'm not aware of anything. That doesn't mean they don't exist though.
Yeah, I'm not anywhere of anything to hold them accountable. I know that there is a program through Edmonton Food Bank called Second Helping, where they will work with like banquet halls, hotels, that kind of thing, to like pick up any extra food that has been made but like not touched, and then they'll distribute it, I think, to people in the food bank. So like there are programs out there to try and like minimize that food waste, but yeah, I don't know if there's any like structures in place to hold them accountable.
Well, in this sense, then the homeowners are, making a small impact with compost, whereas these industries that deal with food are not composting or contributing somehow to composting with all the food that they're wasting or throwing away. I'm just like, there's got to be something that can utilize all that food for compost, fertilizer, whatever the case may be, to recycle, right? I'm just curious.
I'm curious too. I know that we're lucky in Edmonton. We have a composting facility, and many cities don't have this sort of thing, but you're right, there's so much more work to do. This does bring us almost to the end of our time. We do want to thank Yasmin from Kambo Energy and Lauren from the city of Edmonton. And we want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We will be sharing all the resources mentioned in this session in a follow-up email with you all. And we also will be posting this webinar on our YouTube channels. If you want to access it later, if you want to share it with a friend, it will be there for you. Mansouri, am I forgetting anything? We have a short survey for you to fill out as well at the end. And if you have any questions or you'd like to talk more, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach us at assistant, I'll put it in the chat, assistant@CRFRAC.com, and also consulting@CRFRAC.com. So we will share the survey with you now.
Yeah, thanks so much. I would like to thank our panel today. Very exciting, very informative session. And I'm sure that a lot of folks who signed up for this session will benefit from this conversation through the recording that will be available. Again, this is our last session of the second season in Challenging Discrimination Through Community Conversations. As always, we are looking forward to hearing from you with your suggestions. Again, if you yourself or an organization that you work with are interested to collaborate with us, perhaps for our future sessions, we would be very happy to hear from you. And the emails that Serafina has shared here with you, you can use them to contact us. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation and the great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It was nice to spend time with everyone tonight.